Hello, everyone. It's good to see some smiling faces on the screen today. And Happy New Year. Are we still allowed to say Happy New Year? Is it too long? I think there's some social norms there. I always feel like if you haven't seen someone since the new year, you're allowed to say it. Here we are in mid to late January, but it's great to see some of our panelists here today. It looks like we've got some folks joining in live. Thank you so much for listening. I'm really excited to be hosting this webinar today. While we're waiting for everyone to join, please post in the chat. Let us know where you're calling from. And I'm also going to ask our panelists a little bit of an icebreaker question while we're getting quorum. So, as we think about the leaders that you've worked with, what would be one superpower you wish you could give all of the leaders that you've worked with so that when you go into work tomorrow, they're somehow a little bit different? Who wants to go first?
My first instinct was mind reader, but I'm second guessing that.
Mind reader. Now explain the logic behind mind reader. What were you hoping to gain?
Hoping to not have to go through a lot of discussion and background on, just things that are coming up. However, some of my thoughts wander into areas that maybe I don't want everyone to know. So I don't know if I love it. Maybe I just want them to read my mind about things that I want to tell them so they can understand.
You want a hybrid of mind reading and mind control, right? So you can tell them what parts to look.
Yeah, just certain pieces.
Yeah, Shauna, how about you?
I would give them the ability to see reality clearly. So when they look at the world, when they look at what's happening in the business, they see the truth and reality and not kind of like what their biases and filters and everything are kind of interpreting their environment.
That would be useful.
And,
yeah, Alexa, what about you? Yeah. What superpower would you like to gift upon the universe?
I think having leaders immediately be able to empathize with everybody on their team and their cross-functional peers would really reduce the friction that they experience sometimes at work, but primarily maybe junior level or up and coming leaders. Yeah.
Love it. Well, those were great answers, and it looks like we've got a good quorum going here. So I'm going to go ahead and pop open our agenda today, which I'm so excited about. So here we are, Game Changers, January 22nd. This is our 16th episode, which is really, really exciting. I'm really happy to welcome everybody here today. And welcome. If this is your first time, welcome. If this is your 16th time, we're so glad to have you back. But Game Changers is a multi-themed, multi-episode series, and we explore the essential skills leaders must master in 2026. I think there's no time like the present to work on your New Year's resolutions of being a more resilient, more inclusive, and people-centered leader. If you have anyone who'd like to come and listen and be a part of this in the future, I'll go ahead and drop the registration link in the chat. And for everyone who is watching live, if you have a live question, please put that in the chat and we will make sure to cover that as we go. Okay, so let's do some quick introductions. Hello, I'm Janelle. I'm your moderator. I used to go profiles for a year at my previous company, Red AI. We loved working with that company. It really helped us drive engagement, culture, and growth. And now I am on the people team here at Stripe, where I oversee early career hiring and our talent brand. And I'm really excited today to be talking to some fantastic leaders about the leadership reset, essential leadership skills for 2026 and beyond. It's a mouthful. And we're going to talk today a little bit about the skills leaders need in 2026, from resilience to inclusivity to digital empathy and boundary setting. I don't know about you, but I think that's the one I'm most excited to talk about, how to set great boundaries. And we've got some fantastic panelists today, so I would love to introduce them. And as always, we start all of these sessions off with the same questions, which is, tell us about your first paying job and your most recent paid job. So I'm going to hand the mic over to Shauna. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, my name is Shauna Garrity. And my first paying job was I worked at a candy and ice cream store. It was called Candy Go Nuts.
Ooh,
So one of my best or favorite jobs. I was 15 years old. And more recently, I'm the SVP of People and Talent at TalkDesk. I run our global people, talent, IT, real estate, and facilities team. And I'm just super excited to be here. I also echo the sentiment of Happy New Year, but I also like the idea of kind of like New Year, New You. So really excited to
amazing.
get into this.
Amazing. Well, that sounds fantastic. And when you worked at the candy shop and ice cream shop, did you have a lot of friends that would come and visit you? I was always very envious of people who had those
Yeah.
types of jobs in high school.
Yeah.
Was it always busy, a rotating door of Shauna's friends?
Always busy. We had speakers. We had the windows open. It was summertime. We never gave away free candy and ice cream, but we did encourage them to buy and partake. It was so much fun.
What's your favorite ice cream flavor now as a grown up?
I don't like ice cream anymore after
You
that. That
don't?
was like, no.
Well, there you go.
That was all I ate when I was there, and now I'm over it.
You're like anything but
No,
ice cream.
exactly.
Anything but ice cream. Well, fantastic. It is so great to have you. We're excited to learn a little bit more about you as we go along. All right, Paige, up next. First and
Hi.
last paying job.
Yeah, hi, I'm Paige Masonette, and my first paying job was a neighborhood paper route. And my current and last paying job right now is CPO at Newfront. And
Amazing.
yeah, so it's been really fun. I've been with the company for about 11 years, and we're growing and thriving and having a lot of fun over here.
Now, did doing paper route, did that make you an early riser? And is that something you've kept in your grown-up career? Do you like to wake up early?
Maybe like Shauna, it was the anti-early right. Like, yes, I had to be then, and I realized it was not my forte. So I am not a morning person, an early riser these days. But I absolutely was up very early, and so were my parents helping me drive me around at times when it was really cold out. So
Shout out.
it was a shared career.
The vehicle behind the operation. Well, that's fantastic. It's great to have you. And last, Alexa, tell us about yourself.
Hi there. I'm Alexa Leese. I'm the SVP of People and Culture at Articore. I recently joined them 9 days in.
Wow.
But I oversee the people function and strategy in partnership with the leadership team there. So really, let's see, my first job, I was at Target. I was a cashier at Target,
Nice.
which I loved. And unlike Shauna and Paige, I am still a Target lover. I do wish I still had the employee discount. And as I said, most recently at Articore, leading up the people function.
Amazing. I too started in retail. My very first job was at Toys R Us in high school, which I thought would be, I guess, really cute and sweet. But a toy store is one of the more sticky places. Let's just call it. There's just so many kids, and we didn't get a discount. No Toys R Us discount. So Toys R Us, if you're listening, I know you're back in the Macy's. Let's work on that and be a little bit more like Target. Well, it's great to have our group here today. Let's go over what we're going to talk about. So today we are going to talk about resilience in uncertainty, how leaders can stay adaptable and calm in a fast-changing world. We're going to talk a little bit about inclusive leadership, how it shows up, how you can build teams that thrive on diverse perspectives and equitable opportunities. We're going to talk more about digital empathy. How do you connect authentically with employees in hybrid and digital first environments? How to set healthy boundaries, leading with balance to protect well-being while maintaining high performance. And last, a future-ready mindset. How can we cultivate continuous learning and adaptability to guide organizations into 2026 and beyond? And again, for everyone who is listening, please, please, please go ahead and post those comments. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing our slides so I can see our wonderful panelists all right there. And let's get into it, shall we? So the first question I have, and anyone can jump in at any time, what do you think resilient leadership actually looks like when change is constant and unpredictable?
I can go first. I can share from like a human perspective, our nature when there's kind of constant change is I've noticed like one or two things. One option is to like bury our head in the sand, right? It's like a natural inclination to bury head in the sand, just kind of avoid all the changes, not lean into it, not talk about it, not kind of guide our teams through it. And the other inclination is to like hyper control. So like get in there and control everything that we can control. And I think the most resilient leaders are the ones that can kind of reflect on their own natural inclinations and find that nice middle ground. And what that looks like in practice is communicating early and often. I think especially if we don't have all the answers,
Sure.
to be that vulnerable leader to say, I don't know all the answers. And I understand that this piece is so fluid. Yet I think what we can do is put our heads together and get to that like 70% their decision and move forward with that. And then we'll continue to iterate based on that outcome. But just being able to like name that uncertainty and recognize that there's volatility and recognize that us as a leader, we might not have all the answers. I think that creates a lot of trust. It actually creates a lot of stability for our teams. And you can show up as a vulnerable leader that can lead through that fluid time with resilience.
That's great. I think there's so much power in a non-update update. I know sometimes we think we have to have these really deep and beautiful and meaningful communication plans, but sometimes when things are really scary or uncertain, just popping in a virtual room and saying, I don't have an update, but I'm here, and they see you. I love that. Paige or Alexa? Yeah, go ahead, Alexa.
I'll jump in here. Yeah, I think that in some ways very similar to what Shauna said, but there's this really lovely marrying of compassion and clarity when you're going through any kind of change. And I think representing the care and compassion for employees, but also being really clear about where you're going, and also kind of unapologetically saying, this is where we're going, and we care for you, and we care for how you're feeling in this moment, whatever the change might be. And here's where we're going, and this is why it's exciting. And and I think to Shauna's point, here's how we're going to check in on you and how make sure that you're along for the ride, and bringing people with you in that way. And I think leaders modeling that compassion and just really pressing in for clarity for their teams, for the business, helps to support people being able to get over that change curve.
A follow-up question on that. How do you stay grounded and decisive personally when you don't have all the information you even need, when you may be feeling uncertain?
Yeah, the one thing I wrote down as I was preparing for this in terms of resiliency is resetting your nervous system. I think that there is so much power in like doing a deep breath, pausing before you go into something, because if you, especially as an HR leader, if you are not calm and like ready to face whatever's in front of you, it is almost impossible to carry the weight of whatever's going on with employees and leaders. So I think resetting nervous system, doing whatever that might be, meditation, deep breaths, a walk outside, like I think that always keeps you super grounded.
I think that employees also mirror that behavior when they see you showing up in a very calm state, and even being able to provide no updates or whatever information you have. I do agree with clarity and just full transparency of where you are at that time, but that calmness that you bring to the table really gets mirrored back by the team, because then they see you and say, well, if this person's, if they're not frantic and concerned, maybe I shouldn't be either. And it becomes just part of the way and the cadence that you communicate and interact with one another is through that calmness, through clarity, and it brings more connectivity and trust into the room as well.
Great. There's so many good nuggets here. I was going to try to write some of them down because, I think we as leaders, every day, every month, every week, every quarter, it always seems like there's some new obstacle or challenge we're trying to battle, and kind of showing up with that brave face for our team. We're people first, right? At the end of the day. I'm gonna move us along to a different, slightly topic, which around inclusive leadership. So as we think about 2026, how are the best leaders, yourselves included in there, moving from inclusive intent to inclusive impact?
I'll jump in with a couple thoughts, unless Paige, go ahead if you would like
No,
to.
go ahead.
I think one of the things I've seen is, instead of it being a lot of programming, it's actual validation and evidence of taking these diverse perspectives into account. So in a team meeting, if you have, making sure that everybody is able to speak up and has the psychological safety to do so, but also then acting on those things, finding nuggets to have those folks lead, whether they're, they never speak up or they speak up all the time, balancing the way that you are able to allow them to take on these different projects or initiatives or lead. And it's kind of, the intent is to really build this muscle of diversity and inclusion across teams. But where the impact, I think, comes out is showcasing that and advocating for it and saying, so-and-so did this project, and putting it on a platform and making it known that there are all of these different initiatives or things coming out of teams, and representing the different people that partook in that, I think is really critical.
That's great.
And to add on that, I would also include just understanding that every person is different and has to be approached in a different way. And so what, reward and recognition, or, giving them a platform, what that platform is, may be a little bit different depending on the individual, and being okay to see that someone's strength, their quiet strength, is just as strong as someone's loud strength and being very vocal. And so highlighting that in those people too, and bringing it to the forefront to give it some level of even playing field, so that it's revered and looked at through the same lens, and not seen as, someone that's very vocal as, or maybe a little bit more extroverted in the way that they present themselves or what they're comfortable with, is any more valuable than someone who is a really strong, quieter leader, or someone who may not have the same social norms as another person. So I think just evening the playing field and being able to recognize the differences in individuals and bringing it together to help as a team understand both are valuable. Like, we welcome all types of, people in the way that they show up.
I love that. And to follow up on that, is you think about kind of cultivating that or bringing that out in people, what is a leadership trait that you actually think would need to be refined or developed to be able to do that to your best ability, right? To really create this space of inclusivity and safety, and where all ideas are heard.
I think it starts with empathy. Empathy, and really being intentional about designing kind of your team and systems to extract information, feedback from everyone on the team. So if without that intentionality, you kind of get, again, those like loudest voices first, and that can be intimidating for folks that don't prefer to provide verbal feedback, might prefer more nonverbal. I think the other piece is designing systems to allow healthy conflict. In order to provide a level of psychological safety, we have to be able to have mechanisms to have some level of healthy conflict. Without it, you're not going to be able to build trust in high-performing teams. But with too much conflict, it starts to erode as well. So being able to design like teams and systems that create and cultivate that environment, I think, are the most important traits and skills, and then having empathy for others' perspectives as well.
I think this concept of healthy conflict is one that I'd love to just echo. I've been in meetings recently where, we have someone kind of taking the opposing view or talk about all the reasons why something would fail, just to sort of create some safe space around, someone comes in with a great idea and everyone is, maybe they don't want to speak up because it's someone who's very tenured or very respected or perceived as somebody who always kind of gets their way. But if you can create a system where that's the norm, to say, okay, who is going to take the opposing view of why this won't work in the spirit of aligning to why it would. That's been a technique that I've seen some people take that I've been, an admirer of recently.
We had an interesting intentional kind of, I don't know if it's a value of sorts, but where we just noted that we would inspect silence. So if you were being silent around a decision or it was just kind of a known thing that we're like, hey, and we use that language, we're going to inspect silence here. What's going on? What are you thinking? In the onset of that, maybe it is an opposing view, or it's someone that just doesn't have an opinion. But both are kind of valuable to really inspect, so that what other perspectives are in the room.
Inspecting silence. That's a great one. That's a great one. What does anyone have any good examples of systems or rituals that you have seen that, kind of on that same vein that truly amplify diverse thinking, not just representation? I think, Alexa, yours was a good one. Any others that you've seen that work, or even ones that, feel aspirational, but you wish you could adopt?
Go ahead, Paige.
One employer that I had that I really respected the way of giving feedback in meetings. So they always started with the most junior person in the room giving feedback and allowing that person to participate in the conversation. And it would go up to the most senior person to add in and, echo anything that someone more junior than them said. And what I found is that really increased psychological safety, because people felt like they were okay to share their thoughts and opinions. It also welcomed all voices in the room, so that it wasn't just, positioned to the most senior person or an individual. And I also really appreciated the fact that it promoted leadership in a way of everyone is a leader and everyone has something to offer. You're here for a reason. And so really positioning it so that, you're using your voice and you have a moment to do that. What you choose to do at that time is on you, but at least it's a system in place that allows for that to happen. So I really appreciated that. And I think that's such a valuable skill set and approach to being able to make sure that all voices are welcomed in any conversation. So that was just one that I thought was
great,
a really nice one.
Shauna, did you have one to add?
Yeah, I love that. And we take that same approach in our debriefs during after candidate interviews, and it works really well. It's a little intimidating at first for the most junior person to go first, but they tend to like it towards the end. Hiring managers always last. At Talk Desk, I think one of the things that it's just so simple and so practical, but it's been the most impactful for me. It's anytime there's kind of like a big strategic decision or update, sending the pre-read ahead of time, and I'll usually check in one-on-one with each of my directs on their thoughts on it, so that they're not biased by that kind of groupthink. And then I will also check in after. So if someone didn't feel comfortable sharing their perspective, why not? Did we create that mechanism or opportunity for y'all to share your feedback? And then, taking their feedback into consideration and iterating on it. So, the ones that feel comfortable sharing as a group, they can. The ones that feel more comfortable sharing one-on-one, I still am able to extract their feedback.
I love that. Yeah, we have a pretty robust documentation writing culture right now at Stripe, which I really appreciate. And I also think that writing and comments is also a great, I think, neutralizer for getting, everyone kind of feels the same when you're taking the pen and you're looking at something, and you're very much welcomed to read it in your own time and think about it and really digest and analyze and articulate your thoughts. And so I even think being just aware that some people might be more comfortable writing than they are, raising their hand and speaking up, I think really does allow for the best work and the right decisions to come shining through. Fantastic. Okay. I'm going to move us along to digital empathy. So we've already brought up the word empathy already, which I love. I can tell this group's already quite dialed in, but how can leaders build genuine trust and connection in a hybrid and digital first environments? Now, I'm not sure of each of your team makeups, but give us some practical tips of things that have worked for you all in terms of showing that through the screen.
I can go first. So at Talk Desk prior to COVID, we had about 30% of our US workforce were already in remote roles, remote capacity, and each function had a dispersed workforce. So we had 7 global offices, and each function had people in every office. And so we had to build some of that kind of muscle even before COVID, but then after COVID, it really came to the forefront. And one thing that struck me is that when we moved out of the in-office environment to a virtual environment, the biggest missing piece or gap were those nonverbal cues. Our employees missed the, like, you know, when everyone goes into the boardroom and they leave smiling, things are okay. It's all those nonverbal cues that we had to think about how we can be intentional about either replicating in the virtual environment or finding a solution to solve for. And so for us, it's really leaning heavily on our standardized processes, especially around communication. We opened up multiple channels of communication that we didn't have before. And it's aligning back to some of the key decisions that we've made as a company at a regular cadence. And that's gone such a long way. We haven't fully been able to solve it. I don't think we can fully solve that challenge now that we're remote first, but it was one of the biggest gaps that we knew we had to solve for, and we did it with our internal comms function.
That's great. Anyone else? Paige.
Yeah, go ahead, Paige.
You can go ahead, Alexa, because
Okay.
I feel like I chatted.
I'll be transparent. I don't think that there's any, as Shauna said, there's no silver bullet to solving this. But I think that the intentionality that Shauna mentioned translates well in this area of being intentional, especially with your direct reports or your peers, making time to be on camera with them, making sure that's a reliable meeting, kind of just like basics of just interacting in video conferences, making sure that you know things about them that are not work related, I think is really critical. You have to connect with the human first before you build any relationship. So those basics, I think I rely on a lot. I think there's a lot of like programming and events that HR can do to help build connection across the business. But when it comes to just basic relationship building, I think spend the time, make sure you're reliable in that time, and like connect on a deeper level if you can, is kind of my go-to.
Great.
Yeah, I think that that's really important. And I would just add, so we had an interesting journey too, where we were all in office and a very small subset of people were remote, and having anyone remember to even turn a camera on or do a phone call to include the remote participants was really like pulling teeth. So it was really challenging. COVID actually obviously broke all those norms, and we were all then on video. And so people understood the value of that connectivity and why it's so important that when you are in person having a meeting to also make sure that, you know, the virtual participants feel included and so forth. So I think the experience of being fully remote really helped, because now in our hybrid, we're back to hybrid. And so like being in this hybrid environment now, where we're about 40-60 in our split, I do think that being on camera has been a really big help for our culture at Newfront. We're very on camera heavy, making sure that if you are in person hosting a meeting, there's always a virtual option available to people, and that they have participating roles in the conversation so that it's not just faces sitting on a screen staring at you. And then just on a more intimate level with your team, I think just getting into the norms of when video is appropriate for more intimate team conversations, direct one-on-ones, and when it's okay to be off video for more like, if you're on a total company meeting or something that doesn't require you to be on, that really helps. But I do think that absent of having the ability to see one another, our teams that don't do heavy video, you feel the difference in their ability to connect with each other and with the total company. So I think there's a time and a place for it. It's not required at all times, but I do think the more that you're able to come on and connect with your team members, the more connected you feel just in that atmosphere alone. Because to, I think Shauna's point around like the social cues and so forth, you get a little bit more of that that you do miss in person. So
yeah, that's great. So follow up to that question, I think there's so many pros of remote work and the accessibility of it all, but it also can kind of feel like, wow, my work lives in my house. It's in every room with me. It's in my pocket. It's in my purse. It's everywhere I go. And so how do you as leaders balance efficiency with the human connection in always on digital cultures? What, maybe even another way to phrase this, what are some of the boundaries that you set or that you allow your team to set so they very much know that there is an off button?
I think
starting a new. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say for us, it's like normalizing that recovery period after a sprint. So when I was growing up, my family had a mantra of like work hard, play hard, right? So we're all in when it comes to work, and then also all in when it comes to family and connection and sport. I try to instill the same in my team, and I'll actually encourage folks to take PTO. We're very thoughtful about PTO over the holidays. I do like no meetings week in between Christmas and New Year's. For those that celebrate, it's a huge lift. For those that don't, they use it as an opportunity to really focus on planning and finishing up for the fiscal year. So for me, it's all about being very intentional about that rest and recovery period, and making it just as important and impactful as it is when we all come together and sprint really hard to get something across the finish line.
Mm-hmm. It's great.
Oh, that. What I was going to say is just starting into a new role. This is like very top of mind for me because I'm trying to set up my weeks. We work across multiple time zones, and so overlap of working hours is a big thing. And so I think there are a lot of tools, especially now within Google Calendar, of outlining the start and stop of your day, putting in blocks of like when you actually are able to speak in a different, when your overlap hours are. And those are some of the things that I've even seen in my, recent 2 weeks of getting started, of what other people have done. So I'm looking at what behaviors that are modeled from other leaders, also putting that into practice from a tool perspective. But then I think also just speaking about it constantly, making sure that there is safety and across your team of when, even asking the question of what are your working hours and what do you have going on, that in creating a space where you have comfort and sharing those different boundaries, I think is really important. And then I think for yourself, just modeling that, like I try to make sure that I'm not looking at my phone first thing and I wake up, because if I'm sending emails at 6 a.m. my time, then will my direct reports or my teams feel like they also need to be doing that. So I think just modeling the behavior that you want to see in your team is the best one. But then using the tools at our disposal to help with that as well.
Totally. I strongly encourage, if you can and where you can, sometimes that's just a simple room divider, which that's been my world before I was able to have an actual room dedicated to working at home. But to have something where you can almost shut the door to it and walk away, and it's behind something that shields your desk and computer, so you feel the separation of I am at home at all times, but when I shut this door in particular, or if I, pull this cover over to the desk, that means we're done with this piece for this period of time, and I'm focused elsewhere, on myself, if it's dinner or kids and family or whatever it is that, hosting, have your life, live your life, and know that while work is just in the other space, you don't have to be tethered to it at all times. And so I think that is one of the big pieces. And I also recommend turning off notifications on your phone. That was a big game changer for me. I was a little hesitant and nervous, but that was really helpful in creating some level of boundary and knowing, during certain hours, yes, I need to be focused and check in on my phone and so forth if I'm not in front of my computer, but I'm not constantly getting all of the incoming, because it will be never ending. So just not having that, it reduces the anxiety and pressure that you feel of needing to respond right away. So I recommend turning off notifications and finding a way to shut off your workspace.
Yes. And Allison in the chat said that resonates, Paige, having the physical space kind of transformation. Alexa, Something that I've seen work really well, especially since you're just joining. If you haven't checked out when people make those all about me communication guides that they have their team fill out, I'm a huge proponent of that because it really levels the playing field of Slack stresses
Yes,
me
I love
out.
that.
Or if you need to message me, just call me because, a Slack message that says, "Hi, Janelle," will give me anxiety for 7 hours. And something, feedback that I received quite a long time ago, but took to heart is that when I use Slack, I try not to merge a personal question with a work ask. So, for example, I wouldn't say, "Hi, Paige, how was your weekend?" And then say, "Paige, I need something from you right away." If I have a work question, I'm going to just ask you the work question. If I'm going to ask you how your weekend was, that's just a social question and you can, answer it whenever. But sometimes just being really deliberate with how you're using these tools, I think, which a lot of you have said, and around your intentionality and making it a conversation, I think, works wonders.
I love that. My previous employer, we had user manuals on ChartHop was our HRIS, and that was like, I totally forgot about that, but you sparked that memory, and it was super helpful because it talked about communication, work hours, pronunciation of names, like a lot of things that are just basics that reduce a lot of friction in the relationship. So that's awesome.
I think we need them in our real life too. I mean, everyone we meet, how to live with me. Okay. Well, moving to our next question, kind of on the same topic, which is healthy boundary setting. How should leaders model healthy boundaries without sacrificing accountability or performance? And maybe with a follow-up question there. Where do you see leaders struggling most with boundary settings for themselves versus for their teams?
I think for what I've noticed and observed the most is because leaders do not want their teams feeling the pressure of needing to answer at all hours, be responsive at all hours, but they still hold the expectation for themselves. And so they end up absorbing more of the work and responsibility of doing that. And so one of the boundaries that I think would be really healthy is just to have some clear guidance around what's acceptable. And then I think the point about there's so many tools that can set you up so that you can respond, but maybe you do a delayed send and it goes out later. You get it off of your plate and out of your mind and know that you've taken care of it, but it's on a delayed send if it's after hours or something like that, so that you're not picking up the burden of, others and the need of feeling like you have to be more responsive. And just setting, I feel like it's one of those things that we talk about so much, but just setting some clear expectations with people about what they can expect from you. And this goes back to the all about me working norms, if you will. But when you let people know and level set of what they can expect, when they can expect responses to things, it really helps so that they're not just sitting and waiting for you, even just to say, "Hey, I received this and I'll respond in the morning," or "I'm going to get to this later." That goes a long way versus just sitting unresponsive. So I think one of the boundaries is just making sure that if you are responding, it doesn't have to be the full response, but just acknowledgement goes further, and utilizing the tools that are in place to make sure you're not picking up what you feel is the burden of everyone else.
I agree. Well, great. I'm going to move us along to our last few questions here. So the next topic, let's jump into everyone's favorite, AI and the future of leadership. Maybe this is the first time you've been asked about AI in 2026. I highly doubt it, but let's see. So as you think about AI and leadership expectations, what do you think it's going to reshape in 2026 for you personally? Are there parts of your role, expectations, decision making? How have you started to see it, kind of come in hot and heavy at the start of the year?
It's already completely reshaped my role in a good way. I feel like I'm trying to quantify the number of hours per week saved, and it's at least 5, probably 10. I think for me, what that has allowed though is more space to work on the strategic role. So it's helping to take care of a lot of the tactical work. And what I just saw an article in, I think, Wall Street Journal, that showed that there's a huge gap between executives and ICs in how they're leveraging AI and the efficiency gains that they're getting, whereas executives are seeing more hours saved per week than ICs. And for me, that really rang true because I've been able to kind of like piece out my work week and start to drive automation or use automation, leverage AI where I've in some of the like more manual tactical pieces, whereas some of my ICs haven't been able to think like more holistically and strategically in order to get there. So I really do think that's going to completely transform not only how we work, but our relationship with our work. And it's coming very fast. So the leaders that are going to be the more kind of like AI forward or tech fluent are the ones that are experimenting now. They're very thoughtful about that level of experimentation. And they're leaning into it because they know it's the future. I think the ones that are still kind of like navigating the change curve from a mindset perspective, this is their year to really get across that hump and start with the experimentation phase because the technology is going to progress so fast. It's going to be a constant state of catch up. So that's what we're trying to help our employees kind of like navigate that change curve really quickly from a mindset perspective and provide them with the opportunity to learn and experiment with the tools themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. You know, it's one some advice that I got last year from a mentor of mine was just really around just doing it, just jumping in and trying AI. And it's such a silly, obvious thing to state. But if you were saying, oh, I'm going to become the world's best diver and I'm going to win a gold medal, you wouldn't sit around talking about all the things you're going to do when you get your medal and all of these things. You would jump in the pool, right? You would just, I better learn how to dive. And I think we've, to a certain extent, lost the plot because we're talking about all of these things of, well, the what if's going to happen and the if, the when, and it's just try it and see, and see how you can use it. So I really like that approach. I'm going to ask one more question from our preset questions, then I'm going to turn to some audience questions here. So what does it mean to be a future ready leader in a world where skills are constantly changing? And a follow-up there could be, how do you as a leader model continuous learning without signaling a lack of uncertainty or confidence in yourself?
I think one of the most valuable traits any leader can have is being adaptable and being able to, obviously you're always learning as you're adapting and you're taking inputs in, but you're not resisting that. You have this like open growth mindset around it. And I think that in itself enables you to have a confidence around you are adapting to whatever situation is in front of you. And that adaptability allows you to absorb more and therefore learn more as you're going. So I would say that that's my number one thing from a future readiness, but that's also taking into consideration some sort of strategic thinking around where does the business or the company or your organization need to be in 1 to 3 years versus what's the quarter ahead of you. And so I think those two things paired together make someone like a superstar. But you have to be doing both, because if you're just adaptable and only thinking about the quarter in front of you, you're not going to be future ready just by definition, but also just in practicality.
Love that.
I think also just having some vulnerability in the way that you show up. You don't have to, as a leader, a lot of people think I have to have the answers to be able to tell others. And it's okay to say, I don't know. And maybe someone else on your team or around you does know or can help you figure it out. And so being vulnerable enough to just not have the answer and be open enough to engage and get some resources from the people around you, above you, beneath you, next to you, like just being open to it. I think that there's a misconception of what leadership really means, and it's not all knowing, all doing. It's just knowing how to navigate different circumstances and situations. So that piece and awareness, self-awareness can really go a long way.
I love that, Paige. I think that's like, it has to be the first step, right? And then one thing that I've done after that is I've made a commitment, and it sounds silly, but it's an honest commitment to be an expert learner. So my goal is to learn faster than the environment changes around me. And the only way that I can do that is really just grab onto it and be an expert learner. I come from academia, so it's like my natural inclination to do that, but it requires me to be intentional. It requires me to carve out the time and space to learn and grow, to consume knowledge and literature as much as I can, to seek mentorship opportunities. So I try to do that very publicly without overwhelming my team. And I do that by sharing articles, attending webinars, hooking them up with people, mentors in the space. But if I'm making that a priority and they see that I'm, leaning into things, then they see that commitment. I'm really putting a stake in the ground and leading by example, because none of us know what the future holds. The only way to be ready is to be committing to learning faster than what's coming at us.
Love that. And it's not always the smartest leaders, the best leaders aren't the ones who know the most and who are always telling you how much they know. It's actually often quite the opposite, right? It's the people who are saying, I don't know, and I'm going to learn, or I'm going to try, I'm going to figure this out, rather than, I have all of the answers. All right. I have an audience generated question here, and I think this might be our last question. So we'll end on this one, and then we'll kind of give our thanks and our farewells. But I liked this one. So what is one leadership behavior that worked 5 years ago, or maybe 10 years ago, because 2016 seems to be trending. I don't know if anyone else's feeds are all, but let's say 5 or 10 years ago, a leadership trait that worked, but needs to be unlearned or reshaped or modified as we head into 2026.
I could say it's not a great one, but I was so tactical back then, right? So 2016, I think I was just promoted to a director level. And I think Paige said something that really resonated with me. I was that leader that I wanted to always shield my team, protect my team. I did more so that they can do less. And what I found very quickly is that would just lead to burnout. It didn't scale, and it didn't empower my team to really kind of, like dive in and own things themselves. And so that's the one commitment that I made, is that I cannot be that leader that's always there to save my team, to get in the weeds, to figure it out for them. I have to give them the time and the space to learn and grow and do it themselves. And so I think that's the one trait that I definitely need to leave behind.
It's really challenging for me to think of this because I feel like so many traits have evolved right into where we are today. And so it's not necessarily leaving something behind, but thinking about it differently. So one that keeps coming to mind is, I feel like leadership was such a technical expertise viewpoint on if you're technically able to do what, the role, you understand all the technicality and you're advanced and expert in your space, then that means that you're being a leader and you can bring others along. But I think that really it's less about the technical expertise and really about understanding people and how to, rally and engage people. And not that wasn't a leadership quality, but I think it's even more of a leadership quality, because now you're also telling others that with like AI advancement, that some of your technical expertise isn't valued in the same way that it once was, because we have other tools. So it is more about what you bring as an individual to the table and the way that you engage and utilize the information around you, versus just being like the expert that can execute on everything and know all the ins and outs. So it's more of like an evolution. It's not a new leadership trait, but it's an evolution, in my opinion, of how that trait comes to life in 2026 versus 2016.
The thing that popped into my head was, which I coined as a happy hour CEO. It comes from the likability of thinking that inspiration is being likable. And I think that that was very much a thing in like 2010 to 2015, where the leaders were the people that you liked, the people that you like wanted to be around, not necessarily like the inspirational, the actual, what I think we now know. And maybe that's just how I've evolved as a leader, but you now know it is like leading is not just being liked, it is being able to translate strategy, do all the things that we know leaders can do to unlock the potential of their teams. But I think that wasn't where we were 10 years ago. And so I think that, I'm still like shedding the baggage of that myself, trying to be liked sometimes. But I think that, and we can all do better. It's not just a leadership thing, but remembering that it's not just your likability that makes you an inspirational or competent human.
Love that. Love that. Where my mind immediately went is, I think as leaders, we're always telling our teams that was the most dramatic, most complicated year ever. It's almost like we're, if you watch a reality show, right? Every season of The Bachelor or Survivor is the most dramatic season yet. And I think back then we were trying to tell people that the next season would somehow be more calm, and it's not. There isn't, right? Every season's going to feel as though it's the craziest one that you've had. And how do you kind of ease people along into that so they're not sort of expecting this pasture or boring time, right? If you're doing things right and you're in the right industry, things are going to feel hot, right? There's going to be a lot of pressure and there's going to be a lot of opportunity, and we can't burn out while we do it, but we can't expect that the next year is going to be boring, because we all know it's definitely not boring in these roles. Well, thank you so much for those questions. I'm going to pop our slides back open here so we can close out. And here we go. All right. So I wanted to just quickly call out one thing from this. So earlier this year, Go Profiles surveyed nearly 400 HR leaders to understand their priorities, which are probably very similar to our panelists. And one of them stood out really clearly, that AI is fueling HR's growth engine. What they also learned is that more than 80% of organizations say AI and automation are a top investment priority. And the most advanced teams are embedding AI end-to-end across the employee lifecycle, which I think we heard a lot about here today. I want to drop the link to this report here in the chat. I would definitely recommend taking a look at it. It's very interesting reading for sure, and a good study. So before we end, I just want to thank our panelists, our amazing panelists, for joining us today and sharing us their must-have recruiting their leadership strategies for 2026 and how they've evolved. You guys shared some awesome things, and some things I know personally I'm going to take back to my teams and start to incorporate. If you're here with us today, you're already pre-registered for our upcoming episodes. In February, we have a great session and some amazing speakers where we will discuss the Q1 reset, linking performance to AI readiness and adoption. And then in March, we're going to talk about the CHRO playbook, protecting culture while scaling AI. So thank you, everyone, for coming to the series, listening. We hope you continue to find them valuable. If you haven't checked out Go Profiles yet, please do. It's a great tool from HR teams, GTM, engineering, and IT. They have it all. They also have a free trial, so definitely try that out. But Shauna, Paige, Alexa, thank you so much for your insights today and kicking us off right in 2026. I hope everyone has a fabulous year. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.